Hello. Um, it's very nice to be here today with all of you. My name is Sally. I'm from the BBC. And I want to talk to you about a recent study that we did that combines quantitative with qualitative techniques. And we use an independent research agency, BDRC Asia. And Piers will show you some actual Voxbox later. So I guess I don't really need to introduce my company, the BBC, but I want to mention that you probably associate the BBC with the public service because it is a public service media company in the UK. However, outside of the UK, it's actually run on commercial model. So we compete for advertising dollars for our TV news channels, BBC World News, and also for BBC.com for digital advertising. So we're like any publisher or media owner, and that's why we need to demonstrate the value of our product. Everybody associates BBC with trust and quality, which is a very nice DNA that we have. However, it's also important to continue talking about it, especially in an age of uncertainty. So this is a research that we created to meet that particular business objectives. So we approached BDRC Asia with three defined objectives. We want to use this research to highlight the value of quality and trusted news and why it is very important in this day and age where everybody has access to social media like Twitter, Facebook, and also BuzzFeed or Vice. All the different so-called news providers are available nowadays to everybody, just a finger click away. We want to demonstrate the quality and trusted news in this post-truth era. The second objective is to demonstrate the importance of brand safety and the association with trusted media environment would make an impact to brands that are advertising on those brand publishers or media channels. And then there is a third objective, which is to understand news consumption habits among the paid TV audience and how they are impacted by the proliferation of digital news offerings. So we've been always having clients coming back and tell us that nowadays everybody is using mobile phone to access news. Who watch television? So it is very difficult for us to offer our product on TV without the competition of digital news players. So, however, when running syndicated survey data like this one from the Global Web Index, we know that if you consume news on a very regular basis, at least once a week or at least several times a day, your consumption level is actually generally higher among those who don't consume digital news. Meaning, the more you consume news on digital, the likelihood for that person to consume news on TV is also higher. If you don't consume news on digital, you are not really interested in news, so you're not really a news consumer. So this is what we knew from the syndicated survey. But we want to be able to take that one step further by answering why with a more in-depth, bespoke research study, combining with the Voxbox we gathered with BDRC, because we want to understand why, when digital news options are so much available, people still come to TV for their news consumption. So here's a slide just to show the methodology and market coverage for this study. We call it the value of news and the importance of trust. We basically implemented online survey and also with quite a lot of Voxbox interviews. I want to spend a little time on setting up the scene on the world that we live in. Last year, we were inundated with big and unpredictable news events. Now, 10 months into 2017, we continue to live in this ever-changing and unpredictable world. Few people thought that it would be possible for these following three things to have happened. So how unlikely are they? At the start of 2016, if you had laid $10 bet on Leicester winning the EPL, or Britain actually leaving the EU, or Donald Trump winning the US election, you would have made $55 million with that $10 bet. So these events, particularly the last two, actually have had an effect on the economy as well as the consumer sentiment. So they are basically three real-world factors in particular contribute to a deep sense of unease and anger in large sections of society nowadays. The first one is economic. Household income in many countries have either declined or stayed flat. At the same time, the inequality gap has widened. I believe it was McKinsey who had reported that 66% of households in rich countries saw their income decline between the decade of 2005 and 2014. Compared to the previous decade, that 66% was only 2% in the previous decade. So it is really demonstrating the gap of inequality in the days in the world we live in now. And then the next factor is sadly terrorism, and I don't have to stress how that particular event or this particular incident has caused all the craziness that's going on in the world. And it seems to imply that any government, either in developed countries or undeveloped countries, cannot or will not safeguard their citizens, keep their citizens safe, because there's this terrorism always like hovering around, causing people anxiety. And this message resonates with the audience as well, partly because terrorism activities draws disproportionate attention to the media coverage and stirred up irrational fears. In many ways, actually, that is the point of terrorism, isn't it? To generate fear out of all the proportion to the real risk. And the last factor in the world that caused people fears and anxiety is the immigration. From the Western world, there's always the low-cost labor or refugees coming into the Western world, and basically making it arguably the single biggest reason why Britain voted to leave the EU. And on our side of the world, there's the very sad Rohingya immigrants in Myanmar. And in developed countries like Singapore, we are also facing the high-scale immigration problem. You know, how to balance the workforce or the how to balance the workforce between the skilled immigrants versus the local force. That's always an issue, even in developed countries. That's why, from our survey, 77% agree that international news is more important now than ever before, because people want to be in the know. People want to know what's happening now in Europe or what's happening now in the US that will impact their family and impact them financially. Last year, you probably have heard of this, because all the topics about fake news, post-truths, and alternative facts, actually the Oxford Dictionary actually predict the word of the year last year was post-truths. So that tells you, that tells you how much uncertainty we are in the world that we are living in. According to the survey that we have conducted, close to 80% in APAC concerned about fake news too. So this concern isn't a Western thing. It's basically universal. Regardless you live in Europe, US, or APAC, you are concerned about this particular topic. And this is a red flag for the news and journalism industry because 82% of the people we interviewed say that they want the news media to not to be the first to break the news. They want them to verify what they are reporting before they actually go on air. And 79% say that they are more inclined to refer to well-known and established news media because of the concern for fake news. Here's a picture of a fake photo that people were tweeting from Donald Trump's one of his rallies in Phoenix. And this picture of showing up people crowded on the streets for this rally is actually not true. But how do you know true from fiction? And there's another example. If you watch our news channel, you know that's our logo, the red globe. But in this case, there was the Grenfell Tower fire in the UK, and there was a report circling around the internet saying there's a baby rescued from the burned building 12 days after London's this particular tower fire, and sadly, it's untrue. So how do you know what you're reading is actually real? It's become very, very important to consumers nowadays. If you're in the digital media industry, you know that brand safety is the #1 concern nowadays because brands don't want to associate themselves with either negative content or extreme content. I don't have enough time to show you examples, but you don't want to see a traffic accident on the same page where you see airlines banner ads. By the way, this didn't happen on Straits Times. If anybody from Straits Times, this was a fake picture that we did for the purpose of this this presentation. So to ensure a safe environment, brand safety is very. No, it's not working. Okay, so the threats to brands. There are two different threats to brands nowadays in terms of brand safety. One is untrusted content that I talked about earlier, and also extremist content. I think you all read about how the U.S. election have increased the visits to certain websites that are talking about untrusted content. And if you actually calculate the revenue generated from those traffic, it's actually in the millions. It's really quite concerning. And from our survey, we know that 62% also agree advertising on untrusted media will have a detrimental effect on their perspective of the brand. So how do we ensure a brand is safe when they want to go out and conduct their marketing campaign? It's become a very important issue. And because people do consider the brand when they see the brand on the trusted media. Oh my God, I only have 5 minutes left. We didn't even get to Piers this time. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. So anyway, I think I have said this thing quite clear. So now I'm going to hand over to Piers to talk about how we make sense of the research finding by providing a lot of answers to what we see on the statistics you just saw. Piers.
Okay, I'll have to be quick, I guess. So our part was, the bit I'm presenting is really about the role of mainstream media or traditional media in the age of new media. And often I kind of say there are many myths about this, that everything's about change and people like change or want change. For example, the Gen Xers among us may remember the VHS video, which was the top, the image at the top. And that when that came out in the 80s, it was thought that would kill the cinema. but actually the VHS video died before the cinema. And traditional media or mainstream media holds up for several reasons. I mean, firstly, people like the big screen. They like that user experience, whether it's the cinema, home theater, but even paper. People still like the feel of paper, of print media. And people forget that consumers actually like routines and habits. And TV is a routine in their life where they watch it in the morning, they watch it in the evening. It helps bring routine to their lives in a world that seems ever-changing. The other important aspect is that the programmer for the linear TV removes the effort for the consumer to search for content and to filter content. We're doing some qualitative work at the moment on lifestyle channels, and we find that people would just rather surf channels rather than go to video on demand, because they just want to see something instantly, and the programmer will do that searching or provide that content for them. And then there's also the fact that consumers actually like to hang on to certain traditional things or even relive things. In the UK, for example, vinyl records, for those who remember it, is actually coming back because people quite like to relive those old experiences. Now, on the issue of traditional media, I mean, there's certain traditional media that stays with us, and not only does it stay with us, it's growing. So, for example, if we look at global box office revenue over the last 5 years, it has actually grown by 17% from 2011 to 2015. A lot of that growth is international, and much of it is within the Asia-Pacific region. But even in North America, a mature market, box office sales has grown by 9%, and the number of cinema screens globally has increased by 8% over that period. Another area we work in is gaming, video gaming, and even though mobile gaming is increasing at 19% in the last year, we also see TV console gaming increasing by almost 4%. So I will skip a little bit, as we're a bit pressed for time, into some of the news touch points from the survey that we did for the BBC to look at which are the news touch points across Asia Pacific. So this was 6 markets. And you'll see that TV news is consumed by 85% of consumers, followed by social media at 76%. So it is the most common form of news touchpoint, with similar frequency to social media. Now, I also highlight print media because everyone's saying print is dying. It's still referred to by 45%. And more importantly, print media holds people's attention for longer. Online attention spans can be measured in seconds, whereas for print, it is measured in minutes. Online has more interruptions, pop-ups, links, and also the efficacy of sponsored content for hard copies is viewed as higher. And I'd like to refer to this study, very interesting study done in the UK last year, a paper by Neil Thurman, when they actually look at time spent on these various devices. Print still captures 88% of consumers' time. So even though we see the reach and the frequency, what is often forgotten is the engagement. And this is a problem because print is dying, because advertisers are not choosing print, even though it can be very effective because you've got people's attention. But yeah, advertisers are obsessed with reach and click-through rates, and that can be very misleading. So what we did was to look at what TV news does for us. And part of it was an online survey, but what we did was we did some qualitative through Vox Pops. Now, what you often find is that clients, when they have a project, they may just need 2 or 3 key questions answered where they want more in-depth. And that can be, it can be very expensive to implement a regional qualitative study. So what we used, we went to new media to provide answers to the role of traditional media to give us some further insight. And we used BDRC Vision, which is video feedback to open-ended questions embedded into an online survey. And the benefits are, when you compare it to just a standard open-ended question, there's more engagement. The other thing is that you get to see the respondent. So often with online surveys, it's just data. You don't know who's behind it, but you actually get to see who the consumer is. And it gives you that reach. Much bigger reach, because often qualitative is limited to the big cities across the region. So this can get to the consumers in secondary, tertiary cities, and even rural areas. So what we did across the surveys, so it was about 1,500 surveys, we got close to 100 video responses within that online survey. And the key question was, there were several questions, but one of the key questions was, why do you still like to watch news channels on TV, even though the news is also available online? And we were able to, across all the comments, categorize it into 4 main themes: information, entertainment, convenience, and the disadvantages of online. And if we could just play the top right for Singapore. So this is actual video from Singapore respondent.
My family members, because I watch the news with them. So it's like instantly we can just discuss our views, our opinions about what is happening. I feel it's more interactive in a way. It's just, it also promotes bonding for me. And plus the news on the TV gives actually more coverage, it's more in-depth rather than the news online. You still have to search other articles to find out more information.
And then Australia.
I think it's important to still watch the news on TV. I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do is turn on the TV and see what news is happening around the world in our own backyard. With all these terrorist attacks that are happening, it is important to know that our family, friends, here and all over the world are safe. That's my point of view anyway.
So next slide. Yeah, I'll just skip through this. This provided us various feedback, but we talk about, we could deep dive into the various aspects that went into the first area of information, second area of entertainment, and then convenience, and concerns about online, which included the fake news. So the beauty of this is that we can actually embed the qual within the quant survey, and we generated 3 segments from the quant survey in terms of their level of engagement and interaction with TV news. So effectively, each of those videos could be tagged to the segment that they related to. So you'll be able to understand more about that segment by looking at the associated videos with each of those respondents. So just to sum up, now new media, inevitably it will increase its reach, but the reach and frequency figures provided really only part of the picture. It doesn't record attention span or engagement. So these are key metrics one has to also consider when we look at media. There's increasing concerns about the quality of content through new media, which impacts the consumer experience and the reliability of news through new media, which is gravitating people towards the media, the big brands in media. People are willing to pay for content. So I just got back from Indonesia, where we did some research onto streaming services. There's lots of free content. People know how to get free content, but the user experience is not so good. It's more difficult to search for. So people are willing to pay to get a better user experience and to make it easier to search the content that they're looking for. The news brands, the leading brands will benefit in the age of fake news. And those major news brands, as Sally pointed out, gives a halo effect to the advertisers who choose to advertise on those big media brands. Traditional media, particularly TV, it will continue. The big screen in the living room is part of the way families bond. It's part of our way of life, and that will not go away soon. But the obsession, as I say, the obsession with click-through rates and online reach means that there will continue to be a decline in traditional publishing, which is unfortunate in many ways. So thanks very much for attention. So key message here is traditional media is alive and kicking and is with us for some time.
I think we do have time for one quick question. Does anyone have a question for either Piers or Sally? Yes, we've got a question just here.
Quick questions is, did you observe any age factor or generation factor?
True. I mean, yes, we did see that the younger generations are more engaged with social media, but it doesn't mean that they're not watching TV. It will progressively move over time, but I think the general principle of attention will apply across age groups. That is, traditional media will still get more people's attention when everyone's going to be subject to the same distractions online with pop-ups and all these other things that are distracting their attention.
Can I also make a comment about that? So for us, we know that the key difference between a generation in terms of news consumption is the so-called millennial or Gen Z generations. They tend to come to our news content via social network. So they may not bookmark or just type in the URL anymore, but they do rely on what they see on social media. And when you ask, do you consume news, BBC News, they will say yes, but they may never type in bbc.com on the URL on the website, but they do come from Twitter or from the other social media platforms.
Okay, thank you. Thanks one more time to both of these speakers.